FNR, Football Nation Radio.
Cotsanis, no call! Score!
Salamini for Cole. Cole on the run. Shoots. 2-0.
Lazanovsky with the free kick. Launches a rocket! Trimboli, what vision! Blasts.
Yes!
That's it!
Miljevic.
Beautiful ball! Here's Bazanic. They might have won it!
The Pioneers with George Donikian and George Cotsanis on FNR, Football Nation Radio.
Yes, can you believe it? We're back. The Pioneers have found their way back to Football Nation Radio, and more importantly, G2 and I have reunited. George Cotsanis, welcome.
Thank you, George. Great to be back with you.
I listened last week where you had fun with Athos Syrianos. You guys told the Peter Blasby story.
The boys listened and I spoke.
But tonight we step up.
We're back.
I'm delighted to know that you have followed up with one goalkeeper and we've found another one.
It's my welcome back present for you.
Well, our guest tonight was not only a goalkeeper, but born in Wales, arrived down under as a 10-year-old. Her football career, I think, has allowed her to do just about everything you can do in the game.
And still going.
And not only that, you're right, she just keeps notching goals galore. I'm talking about the one and only Theresa Deas, as in peas.
That's exactly right.
How are you, Theresa?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, George?
I'm very, very, very good. Always delighted to have a goalkeeper in the studio.
Yes, we are a special breed.
And especially someone who started off as a goal sneak and a goal poacher up front. That's an extra special talent, because then when you go to goals, you know what's coming at you. You know how they're thinking. You know how to thwart them. It's
Great,
fantastic.
yeah, great.
You two get back to me towards the end of the show, and I'll join in if you like.
No. I just want to know, how in heaven's name does an Australian, future Australian goalkeeper in the women's team, were they known as the Matildas? No,
No, well before the Matildas. I think it was the Australian Women's National Soccer Team.
Oh, that's
Was
very
the full
official.
title.
It's very official. Would you have loved to have been known as a Matilda?
Oh, look,
Or are we allowed to call you a former Matilda?
yes, you are allowed to call me a former Matilda.
It's Matilda, isn't it? Officially, it's still a Matilda. It's not former as such. It's a
No,
Matilda.
they do say a Matilda, but I find that really difficult to get in my head. I understand the reason behind it is to
The same like
make you-
President America.
Yes.
You're no longer you're not the former president. You're President Clinton. You see that
Correct.
the honorific remains even to this day.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing? Did you have a special moment with Bill Clinton
No.
that we need to know
Oh
about?
no, certainly not. No. I'm just laughing because Matilda, the actual name Matilda, reminds me of Matilda that I used to read to my children.
Oh.
So it's I think the name is great, and I think it came along at the right time to give us some formal identity.
Yep.
But I still just see myself as a soccer player, as a national soccer player. So.
Yeah, and one who arrived from Wales, from Newport.
Yes.
Tell us about. Take us way back.
Well, look, my father, who obviously is the biggest influence in my career, simply because he was my coach in those very, very early years in Australia. But he played for Newport County before we immigrated over here, and I spoke to him recently about it, and he keeps saying that he wasn't a very good player, and the best thing that he's ever done is come to Australia and became a coach. So that's good. We'll leave him with that.
Well, he's coached a Matilda.
Oh, and he's a very, very proud man for having done that, and I'm sure he's listening to me tonight as well.
And his name is?
His name is Don.
Don, congratulations. You should be very, very proud.
Absolutely.
And with every goal that your daughter continues to notch up and achievements that you strike up, makes him very special. What does Mum have to say about
look,
this?
You can't leave out Mum as
No.
well, because I go back to those days as a 10-year-old arriving. I didn't actually start playing for probably a year after that, because I have a younger brother, and of course in those days it was my father who went to Dandenong City, the first club, and he basically was coaching a young boys team, and I got dragged along, and that's how it all started. I was just sort of shoved into goals to just help out, and never had any intention of playing in goals, by the way. And we found out very quickly that they had a women's team there at Dandenong City, and it was one of only 4 women's teams in Victoria at the time. So obviously they needed numbers. Little 12-year-old decides to, and I was playing netball at the time too.
You wanted to play for the Australian netball team, didn't you?
That's exactly right. I was playing A-grade netball at 12 years old, so I was doing
What
very,
position? What
very,
position?
very well. I was goal defence, so
of
always a
course.
defender.
There you go.
And that's exactly right.
There's a pattern there.
Yeah. No,
But,
could see it coming.
Look, I absolutely loved playing on the right wing, as the games went along. But as usual, no goalkeepers. Once they're injured, someone's got to go in goals.
You kept drawing the short straw, I take it.
Well, it was only once, and I never got out after that.
Okay.
So she did so well.
Yeah,
So
that'll learn you.
obviously good hands, good netball hands, and you might be interested to hear this. For the first year, maybe 2 years, I wouldn't put a pair of gloves on because I couldn't feel the ball.
From the netball, and you're used to getting...
That's exactly right. And it didn't matter whether it was rain, hail or shine, I didn't wear gloves.
Never wore gloves.
Well, there you go. That's the
never wore gloves.
first time I've heard that from someone. So.
I just thought it was, what is this, Kate? Why do you need gloves? And like you,
Yeah.
love the feel of the ball
Yeah.
in my hand, and I also knew that I could parry it, palm it, and punch it. Didn't need to have padded gloves to do that.
No,
So I'm with you.
I thought I was pretty tough, and
That's the sign of a quality keeper thing.
As a forward, I always wondered why keepers wore gloves too, because I
That's
just
to
never...
punch you.
Well, no, I never thought you'd be using them, but anyway, that's my disparaging remark. I just want to remind you too that there is a non-keeper in here.
okay.
So was that your
You're 12.
first football memory, just that with the boys? There was nothing in Wales, you hadn't played
No,
before
I'd
you
never
arrived?
played at all. I had in Wales. I was encouraged to play the piano. So
Of course.
That's
Yeah. Well, Don and what's mum's name?
Mum's Margaret.
Margaret. Okay.
Yep.
So what encouraged Don and Margaret to bring the family down under?
The prospect of a better life, and I think that's resonant with most immigrants. Look, Newport in South Wales is a port where the coal used to come down.
Yes.
And a very dark, my memories, very dark, dingy place. I have been back, and it's nowhere near as dark and dingy as I thought it
lightened
was.
up a bit.
But
And Cardiff, by the way, have been promoted, so it's
Yes.
a very exciting time
Yes.
for the Welsh.
yes, I've been watching them
Yeah.
with both the men and the women. I've
There
been
you go.
watching.
There you go.
So yes, when we came, obviously it was for bigger and better things. My mother's a nurse, and there were obviously incentives at that time. I don't know the real ins and outs of it, but the best thing they could have ever done for us, but the best thing they could have done for themselves as well. So we've had a wonderful life, and we've very early on, the reason we got involved as a family with football was simply because it gave us a sense of community.
Yeah.
And as
Terrific.
immigrants, it was a great place to get to know people. Mum and Dad still have lifelong friends from those early days. And that sense of community then built up with my brother and myself, because we were so heavily involved for a long time. And if we did move clubs, he played, my brother. He's also he played at Doveton, the good old Doveton days, and was a very, very talented young player. But at the age of 16, he I think enjoyed the
Good
girls.
life.
Discovered women.
Yes,
Good life.
the
Wow.
good life.
Okay. And
However,
Don clearly didn't have enough control.
no, not
or
enough,
influence.
not enough influence. And look, he had some really good mentors, but none of them had enough influence to keep him in the game. And he does regret that, but it didn't stop him from supporting me in my career. And he's been one of along with my father and my mother, my brother has been my best supporter, and still is to this day. And so as a family, obviously, whilst we all did our different things, they've always supported everything that I've done.
They'd need to, for you to have such a great career and to go interstate regularly and be part of state teams and then obviously
Especially
travel
there.
with the
Especially
Matildas,
there.
you would
Yeah.
need family support, wouldn't you?
Oh,
That'd be
gosh.
a big part of what you did.
And financial support from them as well.
Oh,
I mean,
of
that's one
So
of
in
the
those early
things.
memories,
Mm.
who was the one that took you to Dandenong City to train?
Rotation.
Rotation.
Mum and dad.
So Don and Margaret.
Yeah.
Shared parenting.
Yeah. And look, to be quite honest, because we were involved as a family, if we generally would all be there, because my brother would be training, I'd be training, Mum would be, she was a secretary, I think, for a number of years while Dad was coaching. So very, very big football family. And Mum even went on to
Sell lottery tickets.
Oh, everything, yeah. And
Galas.
put on discos.
You see, she put on the discos, but
I might-
also got to watch. So there was no hanky-panky.
Oh, well.
It's called chaperoning.
Chaperoning.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Chaperoning.
Are you
Forgotten
talking
that.
about hanky-panky for me?
No, your brother. Your brother. Remember the one who
Oh,
knows
the-
all about women?
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's not go there.
It's Sean. It's Sean we're talking about.
Sean.
Yeah.
George
That's what
always loves. George too always loves with every one of our pioneers to get their first memories. Where the bug bit them and how it evolved from there. And how much of it was irresistible, and you did fall in love with the game
I
in a
d-
couple of years, didn't you?
Well
She's
and
still
truly
in love with
fell
the
in
game,
love with the
George.
game. And yeah, and I still am. But when I was 12, I can remember one morning my mother saying to me, and I had basketball in the morning, then netball in the afternoon, and
Or
then I had
hand coordination, yes.
I had a soccer game on Sunday, and she said to me, training for all of those as well, and she said, you've got to make a choice, Theresa, because we can't take you to all these places. And the place that I felt at home the most was playing football. And I don't understand why, because we played, as young women, we always got the backfields.
Yep.
We played in mud, and I'm sometimes knee-deep mud, with very little lighting if we were training. And so the worst
Backward planning
conditions...
when you go out
Oh,
to grab
God,
the ball.
yeah. Well and truly, but maybe that's what it was, because I would come home, and I would
Muddy.
have been in my element.
So you were treated as second class citizens. It's fair to say at the time that's
Yes.
the way it was.
It was-
There were no
like that.
change rooms, were there?
No.
Yeah.
But it didn't alter the fact that you chose that sport over the others, and obviously you've stayed in love with it, as we said.
Yeah.
So it clearly, despite that, you love the game, that you just thought, whatever it is, wherever we play, however dark, however muddy, however cold, and however badly we may get treated, I'm going to stick to this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people who I was playing with. I enjoyed the people who were supporting us. And I think I go back to that community spirit and atmosphere. The club was the best thing that could happen to me. I felt like I was wanted and needed and enjoyed by people around there. I mean,
And there would have been some talent
We have a
in that.
representative goalkeeper in our midst. Then we always want you.
Yeah, yeah. And so, at some point, you would have got thrown in to play with boys as well. There would have been times that would have happened.
Look, later players that happened to, because it was thought that making us
From a
play
development
from
point
a
of view,
development
yeah.
point of view. In my era, it was whether you wanted to or not, or
Okay.
whether you could actually whether anybody would allow you to or not.
Okay.
Did your brother kick against you, try
Oh,
and
yes.
score goals?
Yes.
You see, that's another thing. My brother made me a better keeper.
Yeah.
We used to shoot in the backyard, and he thought he could score whenever he wanted to.
Oh, and I
Got
wouldn't
harder
let.
and
I
harder
wouldn't
and
let.
harder.
That's exactly
The old
right.
backyard
It's the same
rivalries.
Not only that, my dad, as it came to
Oh.
it, and it was they pushed me and made me the player I am, or I was.
Yep.
Because certainly I've got no knees left now
Oh.
that will allow me to do anything. But so I. Their hard work, and they were out on those cold, horrible, windy, wet nights doing the training as well and shooting, certainly made me a better player, much better player. So to go back to your question about the boys, when as my career went along, there were some clubs and I didn't change clubs very often because I'm very loyal, very, very loyal. I find it very difficult to give my all to lots. It has to be in one area.
Yep.
But if I did move for whatever reason, if a club didn't have a program or whatever, then I would try and seek out those champions of women's football, male or female, that would help me with my quest. So you're looking at your hands, looking at my hands.
Name some names.
Okay, so a little bit later in my career. So Dad and my brother, obviously,
Big influences
in the very early years. By the time I got to national selection at 17, people were obviously looking at me a little bit differently.
What do you mean, your coaches and things like
The
this?
coaches, yeah. To get to that point, I have to thank someone like Mick Hoare, who was very involved in women's football in the early years and was one of my state coaches. And a number of coaches along the way, a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Southern. Not many people know Jimmy, but he was also a state coach and taught me some wonderful things.
So a goalkeeping coach or
No,
just a football coach?
Just a football coach.
So when you say taught you some wonderful things, are we talking about technique? Are we talking about mentoring? Are we talking about...
His was more technical and technique. If we and also Jeff Olver, even though he's not very much older than what I am, he also supported women's football and
That's
came
great.
down a couple of times
And he still
gave me.
supports women's football?
Oh yeah,
As
he's
coach
wonderful.
of the women's team?
Yeah, gave me a number of training sessions. Alan Davidson also was involved in women's football at one time there before he went to South Melbourne. This is in the very early years. Len McHenry was involved.
Who's influenced many a footballer.
Yeah.
Great.
A wonderful man, and Johnny Gardner as well.
It's
Also,
another, and Johnny Gardner.
His name keeps coming up in this show.
Each and every week of the Pioneers, especially in the opening 8 months.
Yeah.
If we didn't have Johnny Gardner mentioned, we were going into withdrawal symptoms. You know, it was like Johnny Gardner. Of course, it was Johnny Gardner.
Yeah. And
Much thought of.
I've got to tell you that the most memorable moment I have, it was actually, I think, after my first child was born. I actually, at my dining room table, had Len McHenry, Johnny Gardner and Bill Murray.
Make for a great photo, that, wouldn't it?
And me.
And
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and
That's great
we had a
company.
long driveway and they had to drive down the driveway, and I can tell you now, Bill Murray parked on my lawn that my husband so proudly took care of and had new
Manicured.
sprinklers put in, and I had to tell Bill Murray that he had to take his car off my lawn.
Bill, would you move the car,
Yeah.
please?
Now Bill, that's a man who has and continues to be a mentor. He's been a great support for me, and I owe an awful lot to Bill for the person I am today. He was a state coach as well,
Yeah.
and
But he's more than just a coach.
he is.
A mentor.
I class Bill as my mentor now, and has been for a long time. And
He's
if I need
he's a
to
great
know
clear
anything,
thinker.
I go to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Margaret Roy, another one who
Now,
coached you.
They're all men, if you've noticed that.
I noticed, yeah.
But
You saved the best till later.
yeah, because those, I think the relationship for a female with a female coach is a little bit different. I can't and can never put my finger on it, but Margaret Roy was an outstanding mentor and an outstanding coach. She took me away from, I think it was Dandenong North I was playing for, and I went to play a year with her at Waverley City simply because I knew that she could help me to further
To advance yourself.
and to advance myself a little bit.
Wow.
Now that year I had an extraordinary year with them, however I still felt the draw back to the southeast suburbs where I'd grown up, so I actually had to go back, and I think that's when I went out to Casey, to Comets Stadium, which it's called now, and started playing then. That was during my national team days, so I went back there to play with Debbie Nichols and with Jane Oakley, because that's where the three of us came from. we all played together. Even though we got selected over different periods of time, we all did play at one period together in a national team.
Well, you played 18 times, full international, but you would have played a number of other games for Australia, the women's team.
Yeah.
We'll talk about them in just a moment. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Pioneers. It's George Cotsanis, George Donikian with Theresa Deas.
Welcome back to Evenings on FNR. We're on the Pioneers, G1 and G2, with a goalkeeper, and during the break it's been so much fun for us forwards listening to the goalkeepers rattle on about knees and bones and being chipped.
And we should mention that Ron Lord, Australian goalkeepers.
If not the best, one of the greatest.
Yeah.
Celebrated a birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
So happy birthday to
Many
Ron.
happy returns.
Many happy
Belated.
returns. Yeah, there's one for the goalkeeping fraternity. There won't be another goalkeeper on this show for months, let me just
Yeah, but when you go to the top,
I've gone to the top. Look,
when you go to the top, I don't mind.
I have been
a few weeks
pursuing
later.
Theresa since September the 5th last year, my birthday, when the FFE put on a party for me at the San Remo. They called it the community and business, but they really were putting on a birthday for me. So we've been working on this since then, for that long.
So Don and Margaret, it took us that long to get the approval through, is that right?
Well, yes, in fact. My father
Because
Yeah, go on.
Are they
Yeah.
babysitting?
No,
No.
my father had a massive heart attack.
No.
In October on our wedding anniversary.
How is he?
He's doing fine.
Take it easy, Don.
Yeah, so he shouldn't be with us, but he's got that. Obviously, that's where I get it from. This deep-seated want to live and want to do the best that you can be, or be the best you can be. So,
Old school toughness.
Old school toughness. That's where I inherited from. So he's had a few setbacks, but he's travelling along really well at the moment. He was at the in hospital last Friday and at the soccer on Sunday. There you are, watching his granddaughter play.
Well done, good on
Well,
you.
take us back.
Yes. So you remember your first call up for the state team? How old were you?
Well, for the state team, my first call up I was 14.
For the senior
Wow.
team?
For the senior
yeah,
team.
14, yeah.
Yeah.
Quality.
What's your recollections? Your first initial feeling?
Feel it.
I was in awe of the goalkeeper that was currently
Who was
the
it?
state goalkeeper, Monica Werner,
Okay.
her name was.
Yeah.
And she was actually the national goalkeeper at that time too.
Okay.
Or involved in the squad somehow.
Yeah.
So I had a great person to look up to and to want to be. Monica, for some reason, wasn't there the next year, so I stepped up from reserve goalkeeper at 14 to senior goalkeeper at 15 in the senior team. And I just took the challenge on, and 18 years down the track.
18 years in the state squad. That's an
Yeah.
amazing
I've
feat.
got to tell you though, 2 of those years I took off for babies.
Yeah,
In that
happens.
18-year
That
period.
happens.
That happens with women. I think during one of those times that I had off, I still managed the team. So if I wanted to be involved no matter what.
You're like salt and pepper, aren't you? You've
yeah.
got to be involved. You're in everything.
Yeah.
So what's your main memory? What's the favourite memory? Favourite memory of that time?
Of
or memories for that matter?
state
team,
teams?
yeah.
Was actually the whole tournament, the fact that every year we would go away as a group travel to another state and play against all of those other
Was there
state
a favourite
teams.
state that you enjoyed more than any other?
No, because they were all, everything was different every time. So even if you went to New South Wales, every 4th year, it was held in a different spot in the state. So that's
Can
what
you
was
remember any of the stadiums that you played in, or any of the grounds in Sydney?
in Sydney, in Parramatta,
Yes.
and also at the State Football Centre before they've built all the new
Okay.
New South Wales.
Yes.
We
okay.
stayed in the
Yeah.
digs there, and
Yeah.
I've actually been back there recently, and it hasn't changed, except they've got this big new stadium now.
Okay.
So, but the rooms, the boarding rooms, haven't changed.
Who were
very
our
much.
biggest competitors when you were representing
Who
Victoria?
did you hate the most?
No, there's no hate in this.
No, we
Yeah,
hated
there
them.
is.
We
Oh,
hated them. We're
here we go.
Victorian.
Who do you think? New South Wales.
The Northerners.
The Northerners.
How did we fare over those 18 years? How do you reckon you squared up?
Look, New South Wales were always, they had larger participation rates than what we did.
Yeah.
So they were always that step ahead. Referees, their program, they had programs in place before we had programs in place for those sorts of, for talented athletes. And but I always enjoyed playing against them because they were the hardest competition. And as a goalkeeper, I wanted to make sure I was not letting goals in from the likes of Julie Dolan and Cindy Hayden was another player in New South Wales that was just brilliant. And lots of too many players to mention, but I was in awe of a lot of them.
Describe Julie as a player. If she played with her with the Matildas, but
yes.
As an opposition player, what was she like to come up against? What did you fear? What did she have in her artillery? What was it about?
You don't fear as a goalkeeper. You never fear. There's no fear.
Respect then.
Exactly, because I didn't fear anybody. But you ask the players that played against me. I'm sure that I have been told it was like coming up against a brick wall if you ever got anywhere near me. And that's and that's what you need to be. You need to be strong and tough as a goalkeeper.
Fearless.
And fearless. That's the word.
Yep.
But with Julie was. I don't think any of our early players were overly technical because we just did not have the people to teach us. But Julie as a player, she had a certain technique that was very special, that would be that you couldn't read. She was very decisive on the ball and very unique with
playmaker, right?
She should be a well-renowned playmaker,
yeah.
But she is a well-renowned playmaker. And her flair and her style, that's what made her as a player. That she knew what to do and when to do it without anybody coaching her. It was this natural ability that you see in you see in all of the great players,
yeah.
This natural ability to know when to make the right decision and when not to make it, which I feel we coach with some of the programs. We actually try and coach that out of them as players, and we shouldn't. So.
And there begins another radio show.
That's exactly
that
right.
Touch on tonight.
Go down there.
And goodbye to Hans Berger. Was it Hans Berger who left today? Was it the guy at the FFA? Anyway, move on.
One of the Belgians has left.
Oh,
yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So we won't touch that one. But okay, so Julie was an exceptional player, and obviously we had her on the program quite a few months ago, and
Absolutely.
I think somewhere along the lines in that program the description was very similar to Glenn Hoddle in style,
Yes.
and what you've just described then hasn't changed that description or altered that description very much. There must have been a few others that stood out that you played with in that time as well.
And with the Matildas, yes, there were a number of people. To go back to your question about which state did I least like?
Least respect.
Least respect. The Queenslanders also were exceptionally talented players, and they also always had a number of girls from their team that made national selection. And I remember playing, and even though when we played at state championships, Queensland was New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria sort of hovered wherever they hovered, depending on the quality of the team. Sometimes at the top. But never at the bottom, but generally mid-table. But the Queenslanders, even though they were severely competitive on the pitch, were also very social and very nice people off the pitch. So the Queenslanders and the Victorians always got on famously. So I can remember a number of national tours that I went on. The Queenslanders, I always sort of was attracted to.
So did you room with the Queenslanders?
Sue Monteith, an outstanding footballer in her own right as well. And then...
Had a good mate.
Yeah, good mate. And then the Millman sisters. So many good players that came through, but they're the ones that hold fond memories for things that we got up to on tour.
Who did you play in your first international for Australia?
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Do you remember getting the call up? Do you remember the first time you made the squad or the training squad? Remember?
Did you get a letter?
I got a letter.
Oh,
From
well
the
done.
ASF.
Now, Ted Smith got a letter from the Australian
not from the
Olympic
ASF.
Committee.
No?
From the Australian Women's Soccer
Oh,
Association.
really?
Yes.
A separate body.
Of course.
Standalone at the
Yeah.
time.
And what did it say?
It said in the lines of, congratulations, you have been selected to become a member of the Australian Women's Soccer Team.
Oh, fantastic.
Or I think it actually said
But
soccer
it came
team.
in the mail?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So who opened it, or did Mum and Dad wait for you?
No, it was addressed to me, and
Of course.
so no,
So
how old
I
were
opened
you?
at 17.
17, okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
it's well before emails and
Of
texts
course,
and
yeah,
all of that
which
sort
makes
of
it
thing.
even more special.
Oh, it was. It was
Yeah.
overly special. I mean, so much so that when we had a telegram from
Yeah, something else.
the
We should
Prime
explain
Minister
to the younger members of the studio what a telegram was.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm feeling
That'd
really,
be
really
another
old.
show.
The post office would send it to you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But I've still got all of that, those bits and pieces. I've got
gorgeous.
lovely letters, one particularly from Margaret Roy, when I was selected for a national team, congratulating me and telling me, do your best. I've got every confidence in you. And that's still...
That's just as special as getting a letter from the association, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah.
That's
so
terrific.
Those things I still have, and they're in a special box, and I don't think the new generation understand that the written word, and you can touch it and feel it,
Yeah.
how much more important that is.
Today that would be a text, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Being as successful as you were, 18 years, one of the fantastic achievements, you were inducted into the FFA Hall of Fame in 2003.
Mhm.
What did you get for that? Was it a trophy? Was it a magnificent certificate?
No, it's a really nice plaque.
Oh, beautiful
It's, a lot bigger than A4, A5 probably,
Yeah.
so yeah. And
for
it's-
your contribution to the game.
And it says congratulations on your contribution to the game, and I think it says something about something performance. It sits in my office.
meritorious performance?
That's it,
Ah,
meritorious
hey.
performance. And it sits in my office, and I look at it all the time, but I don't look at it.
Yeah, no, that's what good
Yeah.
goalkeepers do.
So
Yeah.
what was that like, that moment?
To be recognised, firstly I was surprised because I thought, what have I done to deserve this? Because I've never ever...
You're in the game.
Yeah,
You're in it.
I'm in it and involved and enjoying it for what it is, not looking at it from outside. So it was an honour, a real honour to go, and it made me step back then and look at what I had done and what I achieved. I found out I was pregnant with my first child in Denmark.
Oh dear.
I was on an under-19 national tour in the Dana Cup they were playing in, and I had under 18-year-olds that I was looking after with a coach and a physio, so there was only 3 support staff with all of these under 18 girls, and I found out I was pregnant, and I was sick.
Oh, that's not good.
No. But I wouldn't change it for the world because I was in it. And obviously those sorts of things went towards me getting the award. But, numerous other bits and pieces that I did at national level within the game. And it was pretty much straight after I'd finished with the national team. They did at that point try and keep some of the people who they could in the game, and I was more than happy to be involved because I loved it. I would have taken more if they'd given it to me, but it was all at our own cost as well, so there was no money and no funding in that. So all of those trips, whether it was playing with the national team or doing anything to get to the AOS to do a training camp or whatever it was all self-funded, and that was the only hard thing.
I think one of the great things would be the reward for the parents. The decision they made all those years ago to come from from Wales to Australia
Yeah.
must have suddenly, not suddenly, because they would have enjoyed every time, as your parents alluded to earlier. But for Don and for Margaret, it would have been a very special time, and for your husband.
Yeah, I haven't even mentioned him yet, and
You remain
Now is the
nameless.
time.
now is the time to
You
mention
remain
him.
nameless until
His
this
name
moment.
is Jeff.
Jeff.
And it takes a certain type of man to put up with this type of woman.
Driven.
Yeah, very driven. Now I've got to say he is as well. So we're very different, but we're very alike. And he's driven in different ways. But to support me, particularly with two young children who I took with me on tour when I was with the state teams. Luckily, they were born after I'd finished my national, and that was done sort of purposely. But they travelled with me with my mother, or my father, or my brother, or whoever would come along to help me.
The family unit.
The family unit.
Of course.
So that I could still pursue my football career. I was 38 in my last national championships. And had the two children with me for that tour, and that's my most memorable state
You could
championships.
have played to 45.
I could have, except that I had 2 knee reconstructions, and that at that age you don't recover from them
No,
as well as a junior. Yeah,
Okay, so your cap number.
17.
Okay, so
That's
the
fantastic.
way we worked it out was obviously the first Matilda squad. You were part of that.
Yes.
Official Matilda
Well,
squad.
official,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they went from Julie as captain number
Yes.
1, and then down the list, and you were the reserve keeper named in that squad.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So got your cap presented. Where was it presented to you actually? Just out of
Um,
curiosity.
Oh, goodness.
Official ceremony or somewhere in the back
No,
rooms or?
I'm trying to think now. I think it was presented to me at an FFE function
Later.
later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, some of the girls have had them presented on the field.
Of course.
I think this was just and I was more than happy to take my cap. And as I've said to you, George, that I actually have put it on while I've been singing the national anthem, watching the TV of a girls' game, or even the recent World Cup when the men played.
Well, tomorrow morning,
Sensation.
you'll wear it again.
Oh, I will. I
The
will
Tournament of Nations is taking place in America.
Yes.
And the Matildas are right there
Yes.
as the defending champions.
That's right, and I will be up at the World Cup.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, 6:15.
Is
yeah.
it 6:15?
Yeah, and I will be up watching it, and
Foxwoods
I
will be
will pay
delighted.
for it because I have a 21st birthday on the weekend that I have to organise. So, but I will do it, and I will say that I will be standing there. And I will sing the national anthem at the top of my voice, as I do every time.
Good
So,
idea.
a warning to the neighbours.
Okay. So the 21st you mentioned is for one of the daughters. Now, you mentioned both girls' names.
My youngest is Cranbourne, and it's her 21st.
Yep.
Happy birthday
Happy
for
birthday.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
darling. And my eldest daughter, Alyssa, who's the one I was pregnant with in Denmark, she's 24.
Any players there?
Both of them have played football, not through my choice, through their own.
Right.
Cranbourne is still playing, and she plays for Southern United at WNPL.
What position?
She's a defender, central defender.
Good,
And they both
good reader of the game.
Yeah, very good reader of the game. But both of them have had a hand. They've been thrown in goals because everyone said, "Oh, your mother's a good guy."
Of course, of
poor
course.
kids.
Reputation.
Sorry
That old
for them.
chestnut.
Yeah. So Cranbourne's playing, but Alyssa, she had chronic fatigue for a while she was playing, and so decided to stop and hasn't got back. But she's a bit of a gym junkie at the moment, and was at the gym at 6:30 or something this morning, and every morning. So they're both very fit, healthy young women who are both at uni and will both finish at the end of the year. So
That's great stuff.
Okay, the gap between, sorry Georgie, reserve goalkeeper or backup goalkeeper in the Matildas to when you first got chosen, do you remember? What was it, a long apprenticeship as such?
no, not really. It wasn't a long apprenticeship because look, we had frequent changes of coaches, and I found that really difficult because one coach might like you a little bit more than another coach and see different things in you. One of the best national coaches that I had, and maybe that's because we had such a good relationship with each other, is Fred Robbins, and Fred was from Queensland, coached for a number of years the national team, and it was Fred that gave me my first cap as a national goalkeeper, and continued to support me. A couple of other tours we had changes. Jim Selby was also a great coach, and gave me some great insight into the game, and we toured with Jim a couple of times, but I can't remember whether they were true national. No, for me at that point they were all. I was playing for Australia. It didn't matter whether they were A internationals or B internationals.
Full on the jersey.
Yeah. And to be quite honest, it's not until some recent years that they actually went, well, that wasn't a true international game.
Okay.
So for a lot of my career, I thought, okay, well, yeah, I've played all these games,
Yeah.
1 year, twice, which was out, and yet
Unheard of.
But I found out that actually was, we were just playing against local teams or state teams,
rep
sides in those areas. So, but it didn't make any difference to me. I just went in and, okay, we're playing against a team from Hawaii, whoever they were. It didn't make any difference.
I'm getting into Wikipedia. I'm going to change that. It's not going to be 18. It's going to be many, many more. All right. So Theresa's now played many more times for Australia.
Yeah, I think.
But you've done a whole bunch of stuff. Manager for the Australian national team. From 92 to 94, Director of Women's Soccer in Victoria, 94 to 99, Women's Soccer Victoria Development Officer, and on and on and on, as George so lovingly mentioned at the very beginning. There's nothing you haven't done.
And continuing to do so, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And continuing to do it, yes.
Why, Theresa?
Because I when I was presented with FFE's Hall of Fame award, and I remember getting up on the stage, and I can lose myself in, I'm not a great public speaker, but I've lost myself in the crowd, and I just...
No, you're great. You're a very good public speaker. Carry on.
I just let myself go emotionally on the stage of all places, and it made me actually... It was a realisation there that everyone says that they have a passion for the game. I don't have a passion. I'm in love with this game. And so when you're in love with something, you want the best for it all the time. And so whatever I do, and I tell people all the time, I am very emotional about this. I want the game to succeed in Australia. It's done so much for me. I could never ask for the life that it's given me. So I need to make sure that I can do my best to give it back. And unfortunately, there are an awful lot of people in football that don't have that, and can cause, and it causes me to then think, I question them and I wonder why, but I keep going because I want to try and get them to feel the way I do about this game. Someone's got to do it.
You will get them. You will get them. You've had to pay a price for some of that commitment and some of that involvement. One of those fingers looks like it's been dislocated badly.
Yeah.
Was that in a game or in practice?
Well, that actually was. This is. I don't know if it says in Wikipedia that I did this. I played futsal for Australia as well.
Wow,
Dual
international.
Just notching up another first.
So we went to on tour to Argentina and Uruguay.
Being there, loved it. Beautiful countries.
Speaking of football passion.
Just loved it. Absolutely brilliant. And got to see what it was like, what the kids were like in the streets. And if nothing else, it was brilliant for that. We were there for a day at training, and I was the first string keeper at training, and we were mucking around, and I flicked a ball over the bar, and didn't just flick the ball, flicked my finger out through my skin, and now the finger it was in my glove, and they took the glove off and sprayed cold spray on it, by the way.
That would help.
Yeah. So I spent the next day having surgery in the bowels of Argentinian hospital, and nobody spoke English. I was sort of just left to my own devices, and had my finger sewn up with a local anaesthetic, and then went back to the hotel and there was a military coup going on.
So you've seen the hospital services, you've seen
I've
the military.
seen the military services and seen the football in Argentina. Wonderful. Yeah, what an experience that was.
You've got it all in the
So
one
much for the
tour.
Falklands crisis.
Yeah, and came back and never played futsal again.
That's a very interesting assessment of that particular injury. Don't go there again.
No.
I did another stupid thing and ruined my shoulder.
Mm.
Again, not in a game, but in a gym.
Yeah.
And that cost me forever and a day. But those things
Yeah.
happen.
Things happen. Look, injuries in sport is just the way it is. If you put your whole self in, something's bound to happen at some point. You know, I can tell you the injuries that I've had, and people would then say, why? And particularly that you're a woman, why would you want to do that? It comes back
And
to
Jeff,
the love.
Jeff understands, right?
He
Your
does,
husband.
he does. But after the third reconstruction on my knee, having to take care of the youngsters,
Not so much.
that's why I won't be playing in an over 40s
The
tournament.
Peter
or over
Glasgow
50s
Cup
tournament
would love
at
to
the
see
Blasby
you.
Cup.
Yeah, no, we're
we've talked
recruiting.
about
We've
it.
talked
Female
about it.
people.
There could be a female reunion happening on the same day.
If I could just stand there and put my hands up, I would
And
be
they
fine.
promise not to kick left or right.
That's
if I could
right.
be a
Do you know-
winger and not
do you
answer
know-
that cheekily.
Do you know,
No.
we had Aki Kotsimichalis here a number of weeks back telling the story of his early days.
First game almost.
And he was told by the coach,
Don't move.
don't move from
move.
that spot. And guess what?
He didn't.
He was so intimidated by the coach, he did not move. And as the players ran towards him, he would stick a foot out because he didn't want him to move from where he was.
Oh, gosh.
So, you know, we might be able to reproduce that sort of moment again.
I might
Just for
need-
posterity.
No, would be good, but I think I might also need some crutches. That would help, yeah.
Okay.
We'll bring the ice packs.
No, it's been one sensational career, and it, as George alluded to, it just continues to keep giving. What are you currently doing for the game? You're on the standing committee still?
No, I'm hoping that could be a possibility. I know we have a review coming up of the women's game. The men's is being done, and I'd like to be involved in that. Just putting that out there.
Yep.
I have, I have been the president of Southern United WNPL. The previous 2 years. They now have a new president, which is great. They can move on. So I've offered, I still offer my service to assist them if need be. And other than that, just recently I was asked by Team 11 to be an ambassador for them with their bid for an A-League.
What does that entail? Like? How did they sell that to you?
They didn't have to sell it to me really, because it's
That's what it's about.
it's the southeast suburbs where I grew up. I've had long conversations, obviously, with them. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. There's not an awful lot in being an ambassador at this point in time. It's just making sure that you're out there telling people about southeast.
Yeah, the possibilities.
Of what could happen to
Fantastic.
the area.
If they can do it.
If
What?
they look, I'm a staunch Melbourne Victory supporter. Sorry, George, I know, but it doesn't mean that we don't need these types
No.
of things happening in our outer
The game's gotta
suburbs.
grow.
It
Game's
has
gotta
to
grow.
grow.
Yeah.
So that's why I lent my support, and Debbie Nichols came on board as well as a former Matilda, which it needed a female presence, because even though there's a possibility there won't be, it's not a combined A-League, W-League bid, women's football has to be involved. And when I spoke to them about this, their process is that it's about football, not
Yeah.
about male and female football. Yes, there's an
It's
A-League
all in.
sso, but it's all in.
Yeah.
And
As
so,
it should be.
As it should be,
The
all
game's
round.
grown up now.
That's right. And so, yeah, it was a great thing to do. Let's get involved. Let's see what we can do. And there's an awful lot of work going on in the area. If nothing happens, it seems to have at least united a number of clubs in the area
And woken them up.
and woken them up to the possibility of what can happen.
What do you make of VAR?
So that ghost town sound is the answer,
Right, okay.
isn't it?
What did you make of the World Cup then?
I love the World Cup.
I thought it was wonderful.
I'm glad it's over, actually, so I can get some
Really
sleep as
was.
everybody else is. Look, every chance I had, my husband will account for this, being late into, we have a small family business, so being late into the business. And I just loved the flair. The best teams, I go back to this flair of players, the best teams had the players that had the most flair and were allowed to create.
Creativity.
Oh,
You can't buy it.
you can't buy
You
it.
can't bottle it.
But you can, but you can
Encourage
it, and you can stop taking it away.
Every time we saw Daniel Azani enter the football field, you could feel Australians around the country just, settling in their seat again.
100%.
Because this kid could just do, you never knew what was going to happen. And that's what I felt for him every time he ran on the pitch at Amy Park last year.
Yeah.
It's been
and
too
he only
long
ca-
since
and
we felt like that at the
Of
national
course
team.
it has.
well,
Yeah.
Look,
For the
I'm
men's.
an ambassador for the club, but let me tell you, I'd happily pay to go to see the game if he was involved. And the thing at the moment is there's a discussion and there's much talk that he's not going to be back here for the season because Man City will take him and then offload him. When I say offload him, loan him out to either a Celtic or a club in the Eredivisie because they can.
Yeah.
Nakbreda in the Eredivisie is a Melbourne City.
And the kids clear enough.
Club. The kid's great. But what we need to do, and the Melbourne City are currently touring India at the moment.
Yes.
And they, in their opening game against Kerala, they scored 6 goals, so they won 6-0. But they did that with a crop of youngsters being added to the senior team and being allowed to play. And Warren Joyce, who everyone says is an old-time coach, is a development man.
Yeah.
And if he's going to develop these youngsters, I want to see Kevin Muscat take up the cudgels. I know Laurie McKenna is a great believer in supporting youth. I'm sure you would be too.
Oh,
You got your
definitely.
chance at
I-
14.
And this is what I keep saying, is that if you're good enough, you should allow them to play.
High-fiving in the studio.
Yeah.
Good enough, you're old
bloody
enough.
keepers.
That's
Yeah,
what
if you're good
it's
enough,
about.
you're old enough. And
That's correct.
and also, I think with this young man, he's got this natural flair and talent. He needs a good coach to be able to bring more of that out, not to take it away. So I hope that if he goes overseas and he does get picked up, that someone realises that you can't take this off him. He's 19 years old.
Before we finish, can I just ask you to give us an assessment? Sam Kerr,
Ooh. She's a pleasure to watch.
a joy.
She's exciting. She's emotional. She's overly talented, and I think she's just going to get better. I think she's been
And she
managed.
won an ESPY.
Yeah, I know.
Isn't it fantastic?
It's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
an Australian young woman with super talent being
Yeah.
acknowledged on the world
But
stage. in
the
front
reality of it
millions.
is, her and her teammates could well be onto the way to winning the World Cup, which will make that SB seem very insignificant.
and so
in
it
some
should.
ways.
Yeah,
If they
and
can
so
win
it should.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
the Matildas being world champions?
Well,
Yes.
I can.
Yes, I can.
Because I'm thinking about
And
it
let's
all.
hope. Oh, without a doubt. And I want a World Cup here in 2023, and they win it here. How awesome would that be?
And you'll be working on that bid and be involved in it.
You
will.
It's happening now, and
Yeah.
I'm not involved.
Not yet.
There's some great people involved.
No, I'm sure there is, but
But I'll put my hand up to
of
help.
course you do, and you'll be
Definitely.
Are
there.
you excited by Anastasia's decision to pick a young 15-year-old
Why
as a
not?
potential striker?
Why not?
Oh.
The possibility opened up. Is there anything better around? Well, I trust with what he's done with this particular squad
Can you
that he
imagine
knows
her
best.
over the next 10 years if she, free of any
Yeah.
under encumbrance, growing in and maturing and becoming a strike force?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think everyone trusts in our Alan.
Oh,
Our Alan
no,
is
he's
doing a great job.
fantastic.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He's doing a great job with them.
Well, in Theresa we trust.
Thank you
It's
so
been a
much for coming
fantastic
in.
You're
journey.
welcome.
Theresa, thank you for being our pioneer on the Pioneers on Football Nation Radio, and we await to see what the next chapter brings, and may it please Jeff, Don and Margaret even more. Theresa
Thank you.
Deas.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been our pleasure.
FNR, Football Nation Radio.
Cotsanis, no call! Score!
Salamidi for Cole. Cole on the run. Shoots. 2-0.
Lazanovsky with the free kick. Launches a rocket! Trimboli, what vision! Blasts.
Yes! That's it! Viljevic.
Here's Bozanic. They might have won it!
The Pioneers with George Donikian and George Cotsanis on FNR, Football Nation Radio.